And just to sort of whiz through some of these topics, once you get the joint badging, working towards that joint badging is important to define the shared bit, leaving the separate bit to be visible too. It's worth celebrating it when you get the chance. And this picture was taken on the 11th of September 2007, which was the launch of our new joint refuse and recycling service. And I must admit it was only after it had been arranged that I realised that was a 9/11 date, which wasn't a great sort of thing to reflect upon. But it was even worse because we let the communication staff go on the arrangements, and we had a nice sort of do lined up, and they organised the new fleet with all the shiny logos to come round this roundabout in a park to meet nose to nose with all the cameras and the TV people there for the launch. To the sounds of Also Sprach Zarathustra, the 2001 music. Now, would you have been happy as the refuse crews were waving to Sir Simon Milton as they went past? And luckily, they did stop in time and they didn't meet nose to nose. But those images have been really important in helping people to understand the partnership, to see it round the town, and to celebrate the fact that it's delivering a really good service. And that one's now been updated, but that's the customer satisfaction of that joint refuse and recycling service. And it was at the time when we started this process that PwC made a list of services to do shared services with and those not to do them, and they picked out refuse and recycling as one definitely not to do a joint service for. They were completely and utterly wrong, because this is the one that gets your reputation out on the streets, as long as you can make it work. Our customer satisfaction rates on this are now over 90%. I mean, it is a fantastic exemplar, and I don't often get emotional, but when I see one of these lorries going by, it does get me there. The logo thing is a really interesting one, and this slide came to me just a couple of weeks back, actually, that if I think about the way this has gone, the way we use the logos is a kind of confidence indicator. At the beginning, there was no question that we had to have both logos or separate logos on every document. When we had the launch and the Ada Worthing service was starting to work quite well, people were okay about having that. So we needed 3 logos or 2 logos or 1 logo on each piece of correspondence, because there was all this debate about what you had to have logos on. As time's gone on, there's a growing confidence in just using this logo now and only using the old formal separate logos for things that you really have to have a separate logo on, like the council tax bill. And of course, I've got an arrow down here to Improvement and Efficiency South East, which is another logo on that slide, and that really represents the partnership we've had with our Improvement and Efficiency Partnership, our Regional Improvement and Efficiency Partnership, IESE. And the money they've given us in pump priming this partnership has been very instrumental in taking us forwards with these activities, and we're grateful for that. We've tried to repay that by spreading the word, and I think, to be honest, we're well into the period where this has had such an impact on other partnerships that I think we've delivered value for money in that respect. So just whizzing on to the lessons that came out of the depot and refuse and recycling were lessons for any service that you're trying to share, about risk and insurance, about TUPE and HR issues, what are the line management and disciplinary arrangements, how are you going to do your cost sharing, and so on. And the other the bottom bullet point on that slide is an interesting one, because we were worried and maybe preparing the members for services slipping a bit during this period of change, but they haven't. They've held up or improved. And I think once people get a message that they'd rather be doing something about a difficult future than just being overwhelmed by it, it may be that there's some psychology in there about keeping things moving along. I mean, the point that was made by the chairman at the start of my talk is that, maybe you appoint something jointly and then you let it filter down, is really what this slide is saying. To some extent, once you've appointed a joint manager, he or she has a vested interest in actually pulling things together, if only to make their life easy. We still have what I call expert resistance or internal terrorists, whichever you want to call it. They're very often the professions or the experts that feel threatened by these activities. You have to work round that. And we still need to drive that business process change things that Alistair was talking about earlier on. At the same time, we probably took our eye off the ball on that earlier on, assuming it would just keep going. But you need to keep the foot on that accelerator. These are just some of the lessons. I think we've seen some of these already. I think if you went too far with trying to solve all those before you started, you'd never start. And there's a bit of me that just says, just do it. Because that's how you actually, if you think in the long term that it's almost certain that you're going to get an overall benefit, then you probably will if you keep at it. And I think if you go into too much detail, anyone that says write an exit strategy, I wouldn't go into a partnership with anyone that said that. I think that's just, that's an effort that's going to kill you off in the end. Look for the enthusiasts, keep painting the picture and communicating it, and face the direction of travel. And during the communications exercises that I was involved with at the time, you're always looking for some way of getting a message across other than a load of words. And I was going to Edinburgh with my wife for a long weekend trip not too long ago, and started giggling and taking photographs at 5 in the morning. She thought I'd flipped because I was looking for a visual image of where we were on this journey. And the Travelator, with that notice over the top, is what it is about. The world is moving under our feet. There's no way of stopping that. And that message, when we use that for staff briefings and in other forms, I think has really helped to try and get people to see how we need to move these things on. The next slide is one that really demonstrates something that's been a bit of a surprise. When we started on this, it was very lonely. We felt rather high risk, rather high profile. Everyone was telling us we couldn't do it and it wouldn't work and all the rest of it. And yet, now there are dozens of other councils either doing this or looking at doing it themselves. There are others around us that have changed as a result. The voluntary sector is now working collectively in Ada and Worthing. The two chambers of commerce and the economic activity groups in Ada and Worthing are joining. We're looking at a joint sustainable community strategy and a joint LSP. The police have changed their command units from the 2 that served Ada and Worthing to 1. They've taken some management savings and they've developed some efficiencies. Unison last week finalised the details of their shared branch. West Sussex County Council, the National Park, other examples. People are approaching us from Northern Ireland for advice on how to join these things together. Last week I was asked to speak at some fire authorities that are looking at doing these things. We could never have visualised just how much influence this would have. I don't think it would have been only happened if we had done it, because the idea, I think, was always there. It just needed someone to take that first step. But there are still others that haven't taken the opportunity, and this is, it snowed, if you remember, just after Christmas, and I looked at my Christmas cards as I was taking them down on the 7th of January and realised that there were still people writing to me as the Chief Executive of Ada and the Chief Executive of Worthing. So I went outside the office, stuck them in the snow and took a photograph of them to demonstrate that there are still others around that have yet to take the opportunity. So check your Christmas cards list and don't send 2 to Ada and Worthing. But it does make the point that there are things there. You can kind of see why that influence has actually started to occur to people. If there is that opportunity, why wouldn't they take that, make that change? And then finally, the slide really just about where it goes next. And I think, I've already referred to the service reviews and the transformation process. And when that runs out, and I mean the next few years are pretty grim in terms of financial prospects, what happens next? Will there be a local government reorganisation? Probably not. None of the parties are talking about it. But will there be a temptation for the members to merge? They've not expressed an interest in doing that. But if the chips are really down, wouldn't they look for some of those democratic savings? At the moment, we pay 3 fees to the Audit Commission, bless them. 1 for Ada, 1 for Worthing and 1 for the shared services. So the Audit Commission is taking some of our savings. We're trying to work on that and we're developing a bit of a lobby. But, you know, there are some savings to be had if we were to pull things together. And maybe in the end, what we're facing is a future of local government where there'll be a much more varied set of partnerships that we have to retain our sovereignty within. And I must say, I'm pleased that we took the step when we did, because it certainly put Ada and Worthing in a position where we're better able to cope with the future that seems to be ahead of us than we would have been otherwise. Thank you very much.